Hello, my name is Chris Moyer, and I am hosting the August 2024 Fmdisc meeting. We have an all EU lineup for you today, so a little international flavor for you. We are going to start off with Johan Hedman, who is, I don't know. I once heard a cross-country skier described as tough as boiled owl, and it seems like you're always running all over the place, or biking, or swimming, or climbing off mountains, or whatever it is. But I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself however you see fit. And also, Johan is one of the prime movers of Engage EU. And so feel free to tell everybody about that. Have at it.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for inviting me for this group meeting. I'm really honored to be a part of this. So, should probably get started to talk a little bit about that conference that Chris mentioned there. So, my company, Square Moon, together with the other European company called Clickworks, both platinum partners, are arranging the biggest English-speaking conference in Europe, or EMEA, once per year. And this year is going to take place in southern Sweden, in Malmö, in November. We already have 135 attendees, and we have speakers from all over the world. And I mean all over the world, because they come all the way from Australia, all over Europe. We have some really good ones coming over from the US as well, and from Asia as well. So it will be a very good variety. And we have sessions taking place at 4 different rooms at the same time. And I really hope a lot of you would like to sign up and come and meet us there to share your knowledge and be a part of the community. So today I was invited to speak a little bit about a presentation that I did at another conference early this year in Berlin called .fmp. And it's about leveraging proxy and load balancing for efficient web data traffic management. And like Chris said here, so I'm the lead developer at Square Moon, and I'm also kind of a curious adventurer. So the picture here is me in the US National Park visiting the Wave. Not sure how many of you have been there. And then this is me from last year when I traveled Norway a little bit and climbed a little bit of a rock here. It's only like 150 feet below that rock, straight down there, so it's not too much. Could have been worse. But I'm really proud of being a part of the Engage EU group. So that's one of the reasons why I'm here to present to you and show the knowledge that I have and hopefully help you out with some of the projects you might have. So with any kind of system you have today, you have to start thinking about security. So any solution it might have something that it's open, and you don't want to have all kind of traffic coming in. So at my company, for example, we have a yearly review of all security things that we have, changing password, making sure we are up to date on all the software and such things. And I think that's important to start off with, that you need to be aware of there are a lot of people who are trying to get harm to your solutions. Claris sent out, I think like 3 months ago, that about 75% of all small businesses are experiencing cyber attacks in 2023. And I think it's probably going to go higher this year, because from what I can see at our clients, they're just getting more and more attacks. And that's a threat. So if I'm going to say what I'm going to present here, I think I can summarize this in this sentence. So safeguarding your business web page against threats and enhancing your user experience. That would probably be the most you get out of this one. So the agenda is going to be what is a proxy and what it's used for, and why you should be using a WAF, and then a working example of how we have created a proxy and a WAF to manage all of that traffic coming in. So how many of you know what a proxy actually is? Now we can't really do any hands up, but I assume that a lot of you at least know the name of it. So a proxy is something that sits between your internet connection and your web server. and it forwards the calls coming from internet to your web server. And it increases the security and therefore also the performance on your web server, only allowing the traffic that you want to have. And well, here comes the biggest part. It allows you to cache request or the answer of the request so that you can give the user a better experience by answering faster to the request that I had. So if we look into how that could look like, you probably have a number of users or clients or partners, or whatever it might be, that are sitting somewhere on the computer and trying to reach your data. What they will have to do to reach your data is just to pass a proxy that is forwarding your request to the web server. And then the web server could be calling one or several different resources, meaning on the data source, for my sake, that's always going to be a FileMaker database, but it could have been any source as well, depending on what kind of request there is. And WAF is a web application firewall. And it's quite a big difference between a normal firewall and a web application firewall, because it's only setting a number of rules to handle web traffic and web traffic only. So of course, on any server that you have today, you have a firewall with a whole bunch of settings to make sure you're as high as possible on different security matters. So in the traffic that comes in, unfortunately, there are a lot of things that we don't want it to come to. There might be someone who's building a robot to attack you. There might be someone who's trying to ransomware taking over your computer. And all of that is usually run through the ports which the web traffic usually use. So it used to be port 80 for HTTP, and then for HTTPS, it's 443. Then, of course, there could be other ports open as well for different kind of traffic, but these are the normal one that someone will try to get into. So the WAF, the Web Application Firewall, will prevent any of that traffic to actually reach your designated server. So if you have both of them, so you have a web application firewall plus a proxy, that will enhance your security a lot. It will get your server to run much faster with better performance because they won't get as many requests as if you didn't have any of those. That will mean you get a more optimized traffic so that whatever workload you have on your server will be only using that traffic that is needed. So a client is calling through the firewall, and then the proxy is sitting in between the firewall and the server to handle the traffic that you want to go to the server that's destinated. So for this business case, a client of mine has about 150 partners who are sending in data through different kinds of web forms. Then there are designated partners like IKEA and bigger companies where we build web APIs calling the data API. But the most of the traffic we have towards our FileMaker server is that they have roughly 2,000 active app users using native apps for Google, for Android and iOS.
I'll just put it over here on the table.
Only per day, they are making so many calls that we had to do something to leverage the workload. We started out by using custom web publishing because the data API just crashed because there was too much workload to work with. So they work in all different kind of fields here. They do any kind of work that comes their way. I brought up this little photo here to explain what's actually happening. So in Sweden, these kind of workers are not employed. They are only chasing work when it's available. And each of these workers need to set them up for specific certifications like you and us have for FileMaker, but in their sake for being an electrician or a plumber or whatever it might be. So they are trying to call the app API that we call it from all different kind of apps or devices or mobile devices at the same time. So when I grow old, I'd like to be this guy here playing this game at the same machine at the same time. But this is actually what's happening right now towards our server, because they built a number of robots to get to the orders as quick as possible. And to minimize overload of traffic, we have to do something to handle that. So what is then happening in the proxy? A client on a mobile device or a partner or a web platform is calling the APIs that we are allowing it to use. So we have in Postman created different kinds of APIs for the different users and to make sure they're only using what we're allowing them to do. For this specific purpose, for the app API, we're only allowing them to run scripts, designated scripts for each of the different functions in the apps. So here are just some of the functions that are available right now to handle all of that kind of traffic. So each and every one of these ones are scripts behind here that are called from the app. And every single one of them have one or several parameters. So if you're trying to call using a URL without a parameter, it gets stuck already in the web application firewall to not allow any traffic in. And in most of these calls, we are demanding them to send in several parameters to make sure we know they are an active user and for what they're asking for. In total, we have about 400 functions that is needed for this app to work. So we are currently running on server 20.3. We are looking into updating it to 21. I think it's 2 right now, isn't it? So we used to use only the CWP engine using a tool called REST-FM from Goya down in Australia. There is a tool to leverage the data load to just pass through their software and only that software to gain to data. That is using FileMaker's PHP, and we all know that is on the deprecation list, so it's not going to be able to stick for so much longer. So what we had and been trying to do is we've been trying to add to the use of the FileMaker's data API as well. The only problem here is the data API still have a lot of limitations. So as you can see here, this is from the FileMaker admin console. Each one of these users are someone trying to call using the CWP, Custom Web Publishing, using PHP. The biggest problem with that engine is that it starts and creates a user on the server. And no matter if I log out or stop calling for data, that user is stuck as a user here. And it goes all the way up to about 150 users, and then it's not allowing more traffic. Because of this, we had to create a tool that is using the admin API to disconnect users using the CWP while they've been idle for more than 4 minutes. That was the only way to disconnect users. And still, we get some of those ghost users that you can only get rid of by restarting FileMaker server. So what we've done there is we built something called, we call it FileMaker FMS connection manager that is calling the admin API for users to get all the users that are currently connected and then disconnecting them by using admin API. So the user that you can see here that has been on for 4 hours for the data API, that's a good user. The one that's been on there for 5 minutes, it's within a minute or two, it's going to be disconnected because the FMS connection manager is running every 2 minutes to start disconnecting users. So we want to have happy users using those apps. And it's always struggle to have a team develop something from the outside and make sure it's working for every single user. We need to make sure that the native app is up to date, they are running the last version, that they are running on an OS that we know they can work on. And all of that has to be done from the app with controls that we set up. So having too much traffic, it was becoming a bottleneck. So on an average day, we had about 150,000 calls. That means we have 1.74 calls per second. And most people are asleep at night, but then people have robots and things. So then you can imagine how many calls there is on like a daytime. The web application firewall stops bad traffic, which on a daily basis is more than 5,000 calls. Out of these, 4,500 are calls that are coming from wrong regions. So we set up that you can only allow traffic from certain regions because we are not expecting to have someone in Brazil or Argentina or China to actually call for traffic towards this API. Then the other 500 are actually really, really threatening because those are calls trying to reach stuff they are not supposed to. They're reaching for specific folders, specific files that are usually on a web server to be able to do some harm to your server. These are the traffic that we really need to get out of the picture. So by adding the web application firewall, those calls are not even reaching the web server. This is really important. So about 145 calls per day are reaching the server. Out of that, we are storing in the proxy about 60,000 of those calls per day. That means that we are only allowing about 185,000 calls to actually reach our database to ask for data or running that script. And to do that, we are dividing the workload in between custom web publishing and the data API. And if you look here, here is what the CPU has been doing on a daily basis. You can see that there is little bit of traffic during the night, but it goes up pretty high during daytime, especially in the mornings, and then during up to like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and then it kind of starts dropping down. And it's pretty much what is happening every single day. So then we have to start thinking about the data that we actually send away. So we need to optimize the data that we are sending back to the users. We are not sending too much. And we are only sending back text. Nevertheless, we're still sending more than 120 megabytes of data every single day. Out of that, by using the proxy, we are able to decrease that because 50 megabytes can be stored in the cached calls they're doing. So only 70 megabytes of data has to leave your database server. So this is what it could look like on a normal week. So there will be a cache hit, which means these are the calls that are stored in the proxy. And then there's the number of calls that needs to run through and call the database server. And these numbers goes up and down depending on what day there is in the week time. So what we build here, as you can see, is a FileMaker file. We call it a proxy file, where we set up the settings for how much we are allowing each of the different calls to actually be stored as a cache. So some of the functions here has a big number in the timeout field, as you can see. 604,800 is a week. So the function get counties, meaning like the states in the USA, they don't really change that often. So you don't need to have that data being downloaded every single time you call for it. So therefore, a single user will only be allowed to call the database for that specific function once per week. If they call for that function anywhere else in between that week, they will get the response directly from the proxy. And as you see here, the numbers goes down and up, and some are 0. So the function in the bottom here saying update person, that is on 0. Because if you're choosing to update your person, you would like to get the response from database that it actually worked. Whereas if you look at the function calling get item price, that's not so case sensitive. So therefore, it's a little bit more time, but not much. So numbers are changing depending on how much of the data that they need to do. What we also done in that same file is to set up a possibility for us to see where do we want to send that information to. So here comes the different sources. So if you look on the far right side here, return response from, you can see it says either REST-FM or the data API. So if the function is to call to REST-FM, like the third one here, so add temp order addition, it will go directly to the REST-FM. But if you look further down and look at that last one there, it says the handle available UEA, that one will call to the data API. So here we are trying to divide the workload to don't get into a bottleneck problem by having two different engines on the server handle the workload that we're asking it to do. So different kinds of work for different users. What we also have here is a possibility of doing duplicate request so that we can in the logs see which of the functions is the fastest, depending if we run it at REST-FM or the data API. Because of course we are logging every single call in the proxy to see which one of the calls we have a problem with, causing too much traffic or taking too much time. So we can see if the data API is better for this function or it's the REST-FM. So any cache that is hit that is saved into the proxy, the response for that one is almost immediate. It's less than a second of an answer from the proxy instead of having to call the FileMaker engine. That will help not only the users, but everything else that this solution is running on. Because as you know, a FileMaker solution usually have a lot of normal FileMaker users. They have WebDirect users. And then you heard there were other kinds of way of connecting using a data API. So the FileMaker server engine will be happier with it if it has less calls that it needs to handle. So that gives better performance for other services, and that will help everyone to have a better experience. So sometimes the proxy and the servers are getting, even now, too many calls. So what we have to build on top of the proxy is a proxy pool. This is a pool to have not get into a problem towards the data API, because the data API unfortunately have a limitation. If you have around 25 to 30 calls at the same second, the data API will more or less go down into a pause. And it won't finish that pause until your first asked question is finished, because it can't handle any more calls. So what we built here is a proxy pool. So when we have more than 23 calls, we're storing them in a proxy pool, and then only allowing the next call to the data API to be called once we get the answer back from one of the earlier ones. This limitation used to be much lower before. When we had our first data API, we could crash the server within like 5 calls at the same second. It really got better in 19.6. And now at 20.3, we can see the limitation are somewhere in between 25 to 30. And we are looking into tests right now to see how 21 is behaving and hoping it will behave better. So this pool is handling all the requests that comes in, and then aligning them in prioritization, because some of the calls have higher priority as well. So then we need to leverage that as well. And this is all to prevent this bottleneck to happen. Because if you need to restart any part of your server, that's going to take some seconds, and it's going to lose all of the threads that I had running at that time. And we all know what kind of problems that could cause. So to do that, we are installing, of course, the API token in our proxy to make sure we don't have 100 of different APIs for different users. So we are only having up to 3 different users, or API users, so to speak, that API users, at the same time calling the database. Because what we also learned is that when you have too many data API users, that limitation of 25 to 30 goes down when you start having more than 5, 6 users at the same time that are trying to request data. And these users are heavily bouncing towards the server requesting information. So they're not really like a normal data API user where you might ask for some article information or an order status or something like that. That will be like on a user basis. So it will be not as many calls. That means we can leverage the calls that we have for this API to only be up to 3 at the tops. So the cache data is usually around 50 megabyte of data. That data responds, we've counted it to 98% faster than calling the data API or the CWP for an information. That means that the user get the response back 98% faster. Then you will have happier users. And most importantly, this prevents us from having these bottlenecks where either the CWP or the data API goes into this kind of a pause mode. So when we're having those users calling the proxy, we're making sure only to allow traffic that we want to the right kind of source. But what we also built here is a way of handling this in 2 different ways. Because on any environment you're building right now, you should have a dev, a UAT, and a production environment. And when we are about to release new apps, we can't have the newest version that we're going to release in production. We need to have that in UAT. And for Apple, they have specific users around the world that need to make calls testing the new app versions out. That means in the proxy, we also need to point to the right data source. So when a specific user are calling, meaning only the Apple review users are calling, the data source 2 here is always going to be the UAT. Whereas any other call that comes in production is going to go to data source 1, which is the FileMaker production server. So here we are allowing it to call 2 different data sources based upon who is calling into the proxy and where it's aiming for. So this is common practice, but make sure you always have a dev, test, UAT, and a production. And FileMaker allows you to have 3 installments for the license that you bought. So you can have that on any of your clients. So what kind of results did we get by adding the firewall application for web traffic plus the proxy? We got a much happier app users. We can see on the server traffic that is really went down in how much the processes were working and how much of the memory that was used. We had a lot of less bad traffic, and I said a lot. Well, I can't say we prevented everything, but more or less we are out of all of that bad traffic. And now we can continue to add more functionality because we have a way of balancing the traffic to the right server depending on the different needs we have. And that kind of gets me to the end of my presentation and question and answers. So I'll stop sharing my screen here, and then feel free to ask any kind of questions you might have.
What kind of performance hit is there to all these cachings? And I mean, I know you said it increases calls in one way, but when your first connection, does that slow it down?
Whenever you're starting anything up towards the data API, you always need to ask for that token. So that's always going to be a call that you need to do. And then anything from that point and forward, you kind of have a ghost user on the FileMaker server that will give you answers as soon as you open it up. And it will also kind of store a little bit of indexing and what kind of calls you've made, exactly the way that a FileMaker Pro client will do for you. So if you do the same search 2 times, the second search will always be faster. And that's the same thing for any kind of web user. So as long as it's connected with the same way, it will kind of have some kind of way of knowing what you stored and what you searched for before to get to that data faster.
Okay, thanks.
Johan, I just want to say, as FileMaker developers, we all struggle at times. It's not the fastest platform, and it certainly doesn't, come close to some of the big iron systems that are out there. So we're always going, can we index our fields? Can we store data as opposed to unstored calcs? Can we use more RAM on the server or more CPUs or cores or whatever? We're always having to kind of play the game of what are the limitations and how do we get around those? More often than not, it's how do we move the work somewhere else, right? You say, I want to move it to the server, or I want to do a PSOS script, or I want to distribute whatever that slow piece is. This is a really fun story. This is really fun to have you guys paying attention to what the incoming stream is, and do we have the capacity and how we adjust it, along with just obviously the benefits of caching and some of the performance and security advantages it offers. So kudos to you. This is really fun.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a struggle to get to where we are right now. I mean, FileMaker server is good at a lot of things, but clearly not a lot of web traffic, unfortunately.
Johan, thank you so much for putting this presentation up. It's really interesting to see the breakdown of how this has been a success for this project. I'm curious though, what are you actually using for the proxy? Is that Nginx?
So the proxy is built and compiled in Go programming. So one of my colleagues built that. So we can't really build our own FileMaker proxy, unfortunately. It needs to be another kind of software that's doing that workload. But as you saw, it's communicating straight to the database of FileMaker and that specific table where we set all the settings. So we're still kind of telling everything that that proxy wants to do based upon what we're setting up in FileMaker.
Okay, did you explore using Nginx? That's a really common proxy system.
Yeah. So,
yeah, so it didn't work for your needs.
Definitely. So there are a number of different proxy software so you can more or less buy from the shell. And they're good. I'm not going to say that. But they also have some complication because they're usually getting quite complicated. And we wanted to narrow it down to only the prospect of what we were working with here, to only hold that information and that only. If you're getting to like one of the bigger proxy softwares you can buy, then you need to have and adopt more settings. And it wouldn't be available to reach your FileMaker file to get for the settings that you want. Because in an instant, we can change where we want the call to go. And if we're going to go to both the CWP and the data API, in an instant in FileMaker, and it will switch.
Makes sense.
So if the CWP engine were to go down right now, we have subx to see where all the FileMaker parts is working. If it goes down, there's just one FileMaker script that will change all the traffic to go to the data API. And then we can restart the CWP, and then we can set it back to whatever we had before.
Makes sense.
Johan, go ahead, Mark.
How do you decide, what to use, what to call in CWP versus the data API?
So there is always a way of knowing how much data you're sending out. So in the proxy, you can see exactly how much data each and every call did. So we were starting by looking into how much data is actually produced for each and every call in average. And then we started to divide the biggest one and then starting to just flow it down. That was the first concern, to get different load of data out. The second one was on a script. If you only runs a script, there are a number of things that is happening. If you're addressing more than, like, say, 2 or 3 tables for searches or whatever it might be, then that's also going to impact a lot of different tables, especially if you need to start writing to a table. So we needed to make sure we also had differentially of the bigger function where you're writing things to a database. So for example, the update of an order, the update of a person are separated into 2 different ones to make sure they're writing to 2 big tables, not writing to the same using the same data engine.
Okay, so is that all determined in the logic in the proxy?
So in the log, we look at it quite often to make sure we're having the right settings and all of that. we get a result of everything that leaves the proxy to the user. So we would know how much data every single call was. And then that was the start point of where we're going. We started by looking at the size of each of the different calls.
Okay, very cool.
So Johan, you mentioned earlier in your presentation that you were, I think, timing people out at about the 4-minute mark, whereas
Yes.
the data API will give people 15 minutes. Have you sort of noticed the number of token requests? Did it go up when you made that shift, or is the sort of initial traffic delta so negligible that it really didn't make much of an impact?
So there's two different things here. So if we start talking about custom web publishing, Claris has unfortunately not spent too much time on that one in the last couple of releases. And there's
Oh, right. Yeah, I get it.
a limitation there. So if you have more than 150 users at the same time or above, then FileMaker will have no way of knowing which of these users they are connected to. So then it will be impossible for FileMaker server to disconnect those idle users. So a CWP call is just a call, and it doesn't know that you actually are going to call a second time or third time or fourth time. It just knows that it's what's one call. So FileMaker server is sticking that one up, waiting for you to make it a second or third or fourth call. That's why we had to use REST-FM to make sure we only had 2 different privilege sets calling in and not 100 different ones, because that would cause another problem. So that's the CWP. But for the data API, it's super important here. Once you reach about 6 to 8 same time really hammering data API users, your data API engine is going to start going down on its knees. So we are only allowing 3 data API users for this specific API. That's it. And then if any of those users are having more than 10 calls in the same second, we're using the proxy pool to make sure we're not overloading it.
Got it. Yeah, I was conflating web users versus data API users. Never mind.
No problem.
Any other questions for Johan?
It was so straightforward, so there aren't any questions.
All right. Well, I guess you can wrap it up here if you want.
Thank you.
Great presentation.
Yeah, thanks for that.
Yes, thanks, Johan.
Yeah, that was great, Johan. Great research.
Good stats. Okay, well, I guess we will go early into the tech news roundup. I'm going to share my screen here. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Good.
All right, excellent. Okay, this is the August edition of the Tech News Roundup. And I don't know if it was mentioned in the last meeting. He passed away right just before the last meeting, but even if he had, I wanted to mention him. Jeff Benjamin left us. He died July 10th. He started in Claris in 2003. Before that, he was one of us, an outsider, and I don't know if anybody wants to share a specific remembrance of him, but you know, he's a longtime member of the FileMaker community, and he is no more.
I'll share that I have warm memories of Jeff at DevCon. I think people who knew him to be a gentleman. He was always very diplomatic in what he would comment on, but at the same time, he could be quite candid and forthcoming, and he will be sorely missed.
Yeah, I just want to add, I knew Jeff back when he and kind of, I want to say his other friend was Jeff, Step Up Software back in the day, and before pre-Claris days. Good guy, and more importantly, one of the things I think that was kind of hidden from a lot of us, you know, he was on the FileMaker development team, running the development team at Claris, so a lot of the internal apps and so forth. So he wasn't part of the PM team or engineering or any of that. He was one of us, but just, you know, working on Claris projects. And there's more than one occasion where a shipping version of the product was sort of locked, and this is what we're going to release. And there were one or two key features that were really going to hamper developers. And Jeff, who again normally very mild-mannered, very quiet and unassuming, you know, would walk up the stairs to Dominique's office and knock on the door and go, "We can't release this without X or Y." I don't recall the exact features at the moment, but I just remember several of them being very debilitating if we didn't have them in the product. So he was always not only just a good guy and a good man, but also always had his eye for the developer community, which I always appreciated.
Yeah, he was a quiet advocate for us. A lot of the stuff that he did, we weren't aware of, but he was an advocate.
Well said. Speaking of Claris, Claris just announced that the Engage 2025 dates are going to be March 25th, 26th. Once again, it's going to be in Austin. Optional training day on the 27th. Details are at the URL at the bottom of the screen. And my understanding is it's going to be a day and a half as opposed to 2 days or 3 days as it was back in the olden times. So 1.5 days. Getting into the, go ahead.
Yeah, so we just came from the Claris partner meeting in London here 2 days ago, and we were told that there will be a 2-day event plus the extra training day, and that they will take place at the same location, but everyone will be staying at the same hotel, and the opening keynote will be taking place in that hotel so that everyone will be able to attend at the same time.
Is Bob still on? Bob Shockey? Where's Bob? Maybe you stepped away, but I think it was Bob who.
Sorry, I'm here.
There you are. You called the hotel, right? And there's an availability issue for I guess the final day.
The final day, the 26th, the hotel is already booked up all the way, and I don't think it's with people from, people going to Engage. I think they've got something else going on. And so if you plan on doing what most people do, which is stay over after the conference is completed and fly home the next day, you're not going to be able to stay at that hotel and do that.
Hey Chris, I was just talking to Rosemary about this yesterday. So the keynote is at the Renaissance Hotel in Austin on the 25th in the morning. Then after that's over, then all of the sessions are at the Apple campus. So that's the conversation around it being a day and a half, because it's going to take half a day to do the keynote and then shuffle over to the Apple campus.
Got it. Thank you for that clarification.
And the hotel situation is identical to last year.
That's not a good thing.
Yeah. So it'll pretty much be, you find a hotel, they gave you 5 or 6 recommended ones, but.
All right. Okay. Thanks for the input. So in the wider news, I think nobody could miss the impact of the CrowdStrike issue. It brought down airlines, tons of impact across infrastructure. It affected government agencies. Huge problem. The old don't put all your eggs in one basket thing. They just released 2 days ago, a root cause analysis. You can go find it yourself if you want. There's a link at the bottom of the screen if you want to go look at it. It's a little arcane, but basically they were trying to run too much information into an interpreter that only expected 20 values, and once they got that 21st value, it sounds like a buffer overflow, but I'm not crystal clear. I haven't read it, but there it all is. You can find it fairly easily. This had some interesting ripple effects. And so before I get into those ripple effects, I saw some chatter in one of the forums I'm on, and it's like, yeah, figures it's George Kurtz again. I'm like, what's the deal with George Kurtz? So George Kurtz used to be at McAfee. And while he was at McAfee in October 2009, McAfee had a huge issue that brought down a whole bunch of stuff. And, you know, the great quote here on ZDNet is, I'm not sure any virus writer has ever developed a piece of malware that shut down as many machines as quickly as McAfee did today. And, you know, I have no official source on this, but the chatter is that he is so keen on cost cutting that the stuff is not getting sufficiently tested before it goes out the door. And it's like he did this at McAfee, and now he did it at CrowdStrike. So in 2011, he came onto CrowdStrike. Supposedly, he has been cutting the budget for the testing of the new releases. And sure enough, here we go again. And, you know, economic losses estimated in the billions of dollars, largest IT outage in history. And so that's still ongoing. So Delta has been making claims that they're going to sue Microsoft and CrowdStrike as a result of this, because they were down for quite a while. They did not recover as fast as their airline competitors. Interestingly, though, both CrowdStrike and Microsoft said they tried to reach out and help them multiple times. And Delta said, no, we got it, we're good. And so there's a quote here that says, our preliminary review suggests that Delta, unlike its competitors, has not modernized its IT infrastructure. And so they get into that a little bit more, and they're saying the reason they refused help is because they've been keeping their stuff on old infrastructure and has been serviced by IBM and running on IBM system. And that's why they didn't want Microsoft's help, because their other stuff got brought down, and it's not even a Microsoft issue. So it's been interesting to sort of see how this plays out. A lot of people who didn't have good processes, procedures, keep their stuff current, got caught out. And so, as I say, I think this is still playing out, even though it happened quite a while ago. So that's one thing. Sort of while we're in the vein of you know, massive outages and stuff like that, in Singapore, there was a mobile device management software called Mobile Guardian, and they got hacked. They had a security incident. I don't think they've been terribly forthcoming, but the breach has been attributed to poor password management, and not really, you know, some super hacker or something like that. Someone just was able to get into their systems just with social engineering. Anyway, 13,000 devices, 127 different schools, and this is the second time this has happened this year. So in April, they had 127 schools go down. In this one, they had 13,000 students in 26 schools had their devices remotely wiped. So everybody was scrambling, all their schoolwork was gone, the apps that they used, etc. So it's been interesting. Also in tech news, there's a really wild story that came out of KnowBe4, which are the phishing training people. They send fake phishing emails to your employees to, you know, help them learn that they should not be clicking on suspicious links. Anyway, there was a guy who stole the identity, and this guy was North Korean. He stole the identity of a US worker, applied remotely, got hired by KnowBe4, and was just getting into his onboarding. He didn't have access to critical systems yet, but he had just, you know, they'd shipped him a laptop, and apparently there are like laptop mule farms where you can say, yeah, send me my laptop to this place in California, and it will forward it on to you in North Korea or something like that. So it's basically a facilitator of doing this sort of thing. And as soon as he got access to his onboarding stuff, the KnowBe4 IT infrastructure immediately detected the fact that he had loaded malware on the thing, and it was starting to execute unauthorized software. So they immediately blocked the thing out. So props to them for catching this so fast. They caught it inside of minutes and completely blocked the thing off from everybody. But it's just a wild story about, if there's, if your organization is a target in any way, someone will try and make some money by becoming an employee of your organization and do an insider attack. And it's just wild that it's come to this, where this was a really elaborate long con where he stole somebody's identity and went through interviews and so on and so forth. The identity he stole is not even, this was modified to look like someone who is Korean, and the original identity he stole was not a North Korean identity. It was a regular person. And now even wilder stuff going on, and I have to sort of backtrack to last fall because that has ripple effects forward to right now. So I don't know if anybody remembers, but MGM got hacked last September, and it was a disaster. They were down for, I think, 10 days. All their machinery was down. People couldn't access their, whatever amenities they had, and it was a nightmare for users. And what had happened is someone impersonated an employee, called the help desk. It was either for a password or MFA reset, but it worked. And this person was a admin level user, and this should have triggered, significant user verification. But according to a Bloomberg report, MGM was basically using the honor system. They had researched the employee in question that they were impersonating, so they asked to obtain a password reset. They wanted to know their name, their employee ID number, date of birth, and that's it. And they said, okay, you're you. And then they gave them everything they needed, and they got access to everything. They got super admin access to their Okta agent servers and started sniffing all sorts of user passwords. And so MGM freaked out and started shutting down their own infrastructure, and that killed everything. All sorts of machines weren't working, systems weren't working, people couldn't check in, they couldn't make keys. It was a disaster, and it affected like over a dozen different hotel properties. Anyway, so that cost them like $100 million in lost revenue and liability. Fast forward to this week, and it's DEF CON. So DEF CON just started yesterday. This hack last fall happened after DEF CON. So this is the first DEF CON where Las Vegas hotels are all freaked out about getting hacked. And so there've been all sorts of chatter on like the DEF CON channel on Reddit. And it's like, I was walking through the Conrad Hotel and someone had a there are a lot of radio people at DEF CON. Someone had an antenna sticking outside of his bag, and security freaked out. All the security have directives to report anything out of the ordinary to security. Everybody's super twitchy. So one of the features of DEF CON is they often have elaborate electronic badges. So this is this year's DEF CON, I guess it's 32 badge. And this is basically a Game Boy. You can play Super Mario Brothers on it or run Doom on it and stuff like that. And the whole point of this device is for you to hack it. But the device looks super scary to the security people. So like the MGM Sphere would not let anybody with a DEF CON badge in. So you're leaving that thing out here. And it went absolutely bonkers last night. Somebody posted they were staying at the Las Vegas Hilton, and security started going room to room looking at him. And if they had any sort of gear, like, get the hell out of here. And so armed security guards said they were going to either break the door down to get him out, or you had to leave. So they opened the door, they got their IDs, and they just kicked him out of there. So it's been wild at DEF CON this year. This is a good year not to go to Vegas for DEF CON because everybody seems very wigged out. So that's a quick DEF CON report. And then on the legal front, in the EU, Google just lost a big one through their monopoly deal by being the default search engine on Apple. And they're like, you got a problem. Google pays Apple billions of dollars to be the default search engine. And so this is not just a problem for Google because Google had some guaranteed traffic, but it's a problem for Apple because it was a big source of revenue. So this steps on two toes, and this just happened. Apple's taken a shot, Google's taken a shot. They're going to have to completely, basically renegotiate the deal to not fall afoul of the law. And this is Department of Justice as well. So the EU doesn't like it, the DOJ doesn't like it. And a side effect of that was that Microsoft and Apple, who had both gotten onto the board of OpenAI, as sort of an observer role, just so they can sort of see which way the wind is blowing and where they might, sort of need to steer their future technology moves. They both got the heck out of Dodge. And so the government agencies are really putting a chill on some of these cozy relationships that had started to gel in the AI community. So they both got off the board. And speaking of AI, more people are, leadership type people are leaving. So Greg Brockman is the president of OpenAI. He's going to leave, going on leave until the end of the year. So he's like stepping down with pretty much immediate effect. John Schulman, who's a researcher, is leaving for the rival startup Anthropic. They were both co-founders. Significant loss of executive talent there. And Schulman was in the safety and security role, which was all bound up in the whole thing when Anthropic tossed their CEO last fall. It was all about security, and they were disbanding the guardrail unit for the thing. So John Schulman made a post on Twitter, now called X, saying, "Oh, I'm leaving it in good hands, and these guys are going to take care of things." But it's not a good sign for OpenAI to be losing the head of their sort of safety and security branch of the operation there. So that's a big deal. And, good for Anthropic. Anthropic, by the way, was founded by former OpenAI employees. So it's interesting that, back in the day, GE used to train executive talent who then went on to become CEOs of or chief operating executives of other companies. And now it looks like OpenAI, they've lost at least half of their starting employee core to other organizations. And so that's continued. And these two in particular are very high level co-founders, executives, and now they're gone. And while we're on the topic of AI, let's talk about Apple Intelligence. I don't know if I'd call them hackers, but people who have been looking at the macOS 15.1 beta found a mobile asset file that has interesting stuff. So it's basically code meant to tweak whatever prompt is given by the user. And so it has some kind of interesting stuff in here, like do not hallucinate. Like you can just tell an AI not to hallucinate, or do not make up factual information. So I guess it's instructive that anybody, including us, who are looking at integrating AI technology into FileMaker solutions, this is what one of the most technically proficient companies in the world is having to resort to get this kind of stuff, because this is not, it's more art than science. And so you have to really massage the inputs on these things to, get a good result consistently. And so I just found it instructive and illuminating that this is the kind of stuff that's going on. But you should, if you go to Ars Technica and grab the "Do Not Hallucinate" headline, they have a link to the Apple stuff or the Twitter post that will give you great detail on, how all this goes down. Or you can just go to macOS beta and, follow that user on Twitter. And this happens to be on Reddit, but it's the same. this is a little bit older event. This was posted on July 15th, but some researchers discovered that two fake AWS packages that have been downloaded hundreds of times from the Node Package Manager, so this is an NPM repo, contained code to backdoor developers' computers. So if you use AWS, and a lot of people do, this stuff, it was actually very cleverly hidden inside of a JPEG. And so it would pull the code out of the JPEG and sort of assemble it and execute it. And so it's super sophisticated attack, hidden in plain sight for those of you who use Node Package Manager, and then boom, your AWS instances can get compromised. So for those of you who use libraries like this, you should absolutely be using a service like Snyk, SNYK, which does code dependency review and checks for vulnerabilities. So the threats are getting much more sophisticated these days than in times gone by. And then finally, I just have a sad report that the Cartoon Network website has been shut down after 26 years of faithful service. And so anybody who wants to do cartoons on demand now has to go to Max. The end of an era, truly. And that's all I got. So let me stop sharing.
Chris, did you just get back from Europe?
Did I just get back from Europe?
Did you go to a conference or something?
Mm,
Or am I
months ago.
remembering last month?
2 months ago.
Probably remembering last month. I just got back from Ohio, but not a conference.
Hot and sticky Ohio.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. No, so yeah, it's crazy trying to do FileMaker Tech News these days because there's so much stuff going on, and you really got to think about, well, does anybody even give a rat's behind about this? But I know everyone cared about the Cartoon Network, but some of that other stuff is wild. There's tons and tons and tons of security breaches going on all the time now. But I thought that was interesting that when they got inside of MGM, they just hung out on their Okta servers and just hoovered up everybody's credentials, and MGM freaked out and killed their own infrastructure. But yeah, it's a wild time to be in Vegas right now. The hackers are really getting the stink eye from various hospitality organizations. I guess we could go into breakout rooms right now. I will pause the recording and we will do some quick breakouts. All right, we are going to move on to our next session, which I have called Schema Change Tracking, but Sergey might want to title it differently. Go ahead and share your screen and feel free to introduce yourself.
All right, let's share this screen and then press play. And I hope you can see my screen.
Yes.
Yep.
All right. This is a session that I presented at .fmp 2 months ago. And I was pretty surprised when I was asked to present to you guys. This session, as you already heard, is about tracking the schema changes. Well, not only schema changes, but mostly about the schema changes. So you are probably wondering who I am, since most of you never seen me and never heard about me. My name is Sergey. I am from Ukraine. I'm currently living in Belgium. I work at Clickworks, so I represent the second part of Engage You. Actually, wait a second. Yes, I just realized that my light was not on. So I represent the second part of Engage You organizers, but don't ask me anything about that. I don't know. And I come from a software engineering background, which is pretty boring in FileMaker community. Everyone has those fancy paleontologist or music major or something, and I'm just a software engineer. That sucks. I don't even have anything to brag about. What I want to talk about is the undocumented changes to the database schema and why they are dangerous, especially in larger projects where we have a lot of developers. Want it or not, this will happen from time to time. There are plethora of reasons. A junior developer who's still getting familiar with FileMaker, maybe a new colleague who doesn't know the project, you got distracted by a call and forgot what you were doing, your cat stepped on a delete key or anything like that. And is it really scary? In most cases, not, but there are some cases that we experienced in ClickWorks, at ClickWorks, I must say. For example, there was a field in our database, a text field, that was just used for storing information that was never used in the UI or anything. And then we were asked to add this field on the layout. Someone from the clients decided to, hey, let me do a quick search on this field. And that field had a checkbox with create indexes automatically. And we ended up with the database hanging at 4 o'clock on Friday for 60 users. Not a great experience, I must say. Some other examples are turning a regular field into an unstored calculation. That happened to us. Also not a very pleasant experience when someone decided to do a search on it. And don't even get me started on hard-coded things. I hope not many of you are doing this in 2024, but if you do, you should probably rethink some of your choices. Okay, and I think everyone is scared enough by now and can agree that this is an important topic, and we can move on from the suspense part and take a look at some possible solutions for this problem. Exhibit number 0, let's call it, because it was never really implemented. This is something that initially came to our minds. It was quickly dismissed because it has a lot of flaws. The idea was to have a person assigned for schema changes specifically, meaning that this person is the only one who can add, edit, delete tables, fields, table occurrences. Ideally someone who's experienced and can see if, okay, this change might be dangerous. I still want to mention it because I think that this approach might be valid for some very specific cases, but the pros is it's quite a reliable approach, I would say, because, well, when there is only one person doing that stuff, you always know who to talk to. There might be some other pros, but I really could not think about any. The cons is it's extremely annoying. Can you imagine waiting for someone to respond when you want to create a new field or something? It creates a lot of delays for the same reason, and your developers would absolutely hate that, and if you go with that approach. And I think that's enough, and we can proceed to the next one. A self-made solution. And what I mean by that is something native to FileMaker made with design functions and SQL queries to FileMaker system tables. I think most of you probably know what I'm talking about. With those, you can build your pretty basic solution. You can track things like table changes, field changes, layout, scripts, value lists. But actually, even if you are familiar with what I'm talking about, there is a great article by Andrew Duncan from Databuzz. I can probably even show you that. I think I have it open in my browser here. Because some of those design functions and FileMaker system tables, they were adjusted recently in version 2023. So maybe something to revisit. And let's talk about pros and cons. So the first pro is you can tailor it to your needs. If you just want to know, okay, give me a list of fields that were changed since yesterday, you can do that yourself. You don't need to opt in for any more advanced solutions that we will talk about later. It can be fully automated. You can do a script, a nightly script, hourly script, whatever, that will run, check for the changes, send you an email or anything that you would prefer. There are no external tools required. It's all natively to FileMaker. You can do that in any project. You don't need to install anything or wherever. And it's free. Kind of free, because you have to actually develop it. You have to spend your time, so it's not really free. It is pretty basic, so you cannot do anything fancy with that, and it can be very clunky to code and use. I think if you already tried to work with design functions and FileMaker system tables, you probably know what I'm talking about. There are some limitations what they can do, so you have to kind of use both. You cannot just go with design functions because they do not return everything as you would expect. So you have to also do SQL queries, and then it becomes a bit messy. There are probably more of those, but I think you've got the general idea. So we can talk about the extended edition of Handmade solution. So I mentioned that you can develop it yourself, and everything that you can develop in FileMaker, there is already an MBS function that can do that better than you. And I won't go too much into the details. It is already covered pretty nicely on their website. Here in the video, with the help of an MBS plugin, you can make something resembling the Git, where you can do all sorts of interesting stuff. If you are interested in that, you can check out this video. I will have a link at the end of this presentation. Christian explains everything pretty nicely here, and I think that's an interesting solution if you already use MBS anyways. And while I was presenting at .fmp, it was brought to my attention that base elements also, they have a change report functionality. I did not explore it too much since we don't really use base elements at ClickWorks, so it would be a bit of time commitment to do that, and I don't think I could justify that for to my bosses. And from what I could understand, its capabilities are pretty limited comparing to other things that I will mention later. But still, if you are an active user of base elements, there are things that you can use. But if you are, you probably already know that. Next thing is Fmdisc. This is a software that more experienced developers are probably familiar with. Sadly, the author of this software has passed away back in 2016, so the software is discontinued now. I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's outdated, obviously. The only reason I mentioned this in this presentation, because if you Google for things that can track changes and other things, this still comes up in Google for some reason. So that's why I'm mentioning it. So let's move on to the next thing. FM version. I can show you the video pretty quick because it is already explained in the video. Well, not explained, but more of a showcase. How it works and what it does. And I do not see the button. I need to do this. So this is a versioning tool. It is a versioning tool from Kampen Automatiseren, a Dutch company. It claims to be the most advanced FileMaker solution manager and the first version manager made for FileMaker. You can decide for yourself how much grounds this claim can have. I can honestly say that we did not explore this option thoroughly. I will explain why. First, we will take a look at pros. And I thought that I will be speaking long enough for this video to finish. So let's quickly do this so you get the general idea how it looks and how it works. So you better understand what I'm going to talk about. And I hope you briefly got the idea. I think I should have timed that properly. So that's my bad. So the pros. It is a cloud-based, so it is pretty fast. You put your XMLs, DDRs to the website. It does all the processing on the website, so you don't have to burden your own PC with the processing. It has an add-on that you can add to your FileMaker solution, and it automates the creation of a DDR, the upload process, and well, the processing. And you can see the results right away whenever you please. It keeps a versions history, so it is kind of similar to Git, and it is something that distinguishes it from other solutions that we will see later. It has a pretty clean and user-friendly interface, I would say. At least I found it nice to navigate. And it supports both the DDR reports and copy as XML. So this is actually something I think that is unique to the solutions that I present, because they usually go one way or the other. And the cons is it is cloud-based. It is its biggest pro and its biggest con. Since it is cloud-based, you have to upload your DDRs or XML copies to their website in order to get a result. We don't really feel very comfortable about it at ClickWorks, and I think in general in Europe, we are pretty paranoid about our data. There are probably some legal things that would not even allow you to do that. Like if you're not the owner of the database, you would have to tell your client, okay, I will upload some information about your database to some cloud service. I can imagine that not every client will be happy with that. This is the main reason why we skipped this tool completely. We did not really work with that. So it is also pretty expensive. We can take a look at their website again and see the pricing. It is limited to 10 users only. I would guess that's because it is cloud-based and, you know, space equals money. And we will compare to other things that I will discuss later, but I can already tell you that it is expensive in comparison to every other tool. They have even, I think, a special section about the security measures where they try to convince you that it's very secure, your data is not going anywhere and things like that. But I cannot just take my database and give the information to someone else because, well, it may be not the best practice, but sometimes we store some sensitive informations in like custom functions, and it is visible there. So you cannot be sure that no one has access to it. And as I mentioned, only 10 users is not enough, I would say. At Clickworks, we're not that big of a company, but we still have around 15 people. So for us, it wouldn't work. And it's non-customizable. So you cannot really adjust what you want to see, what you don't want to see. It's even in their frequently asked questions sections where they say, we excluded these things because we thought that you don't need them, but well, what if I do? So that's it. And next entry is FM Perception Diff Tool. Before we start talking about it, we'll do a live demo because we know that live demos always go flawless, no setbacks or anything. That's great. We will actually start from scratch because there is something interesting that I noticed while I was preparing for this session. What you want to do is open your FM Perception, and there is a new DDR diff processor. We will choose the same database version from May of this year and version just a few days ago. And what I was impressed with is it goes really fast. When I was preparing for .fmp, I also did a few tries, and it was taking like 5, maybe 7 minutes. And as you can see, it's already done. I just received all the changes for 3 months, and I was really impressed with that. This is how it looks, roughly. And you probably can already see some cons, but let's switch back. So the pros is it's a pretty powerful tool. You can see pretty much all the changes. Well, yes, it shows everything pretty much. So you can't really customize everything. So same as with the previous one. And a lot of us already use FM perception, so there is no need to download anything extra. It's built in basically. It works with DDRs. DDRs are much faster to create than XML copies, so I see that as a win. And it's lightning fast. You could see I just booted up 2 DDRs and it was done in under a minute. Cons is it can be quite hard to read and navigate. As you can see, it's not everyone's cup of tea to just go through all of this list and be like, okay, is this relevant? Is this relevant? I don't think so. And it creates a lot of noise that you don't really want to see. For example, here it says that the table was reordered in the relationship screen, which is not very relevant. Like, okay, it was moved 1 pixel down. That's not that interesting. You need to manually create DDRs. I think that can be automated somehow, but we did not try because, well, you will figure out why later. And it is not the main focus of the tool. The FM perception is made for a different purpose. So this tool can just stay as it is for a while, no updates or something. But that is not the issue because FM comparison exists. This is a different tool from the same developer of FM perception. Since our last demo did not go up in flames, I can also do the one for this. This is how it looks. This is an XML copy of the same database that I just showed you. The interface is pretty nice. You can see all kinds of changes, who did them, when they did them. It's easy to navigate and etc. It is pretty customizable. If I choose to create a new comparison, you can customize pretty much anything. You can deselect things that you don't care about. Okay, I don't want to see what happens with custom menus. That's not interesting to me. You can select all of these things, so it's highly customizable. It is what I really like about it. And oops, wrong thing. So the pros is, I think you can agree, it has a good and easy to use UI. Everything is pretty obvious. It shows all the changes in tiny details, which is similar to Fmdisc. It comes free with FM perception license, which is really great because, as I mentioned, a lot of us already use FM perception. It is pretty fast. It's nowhere near as fast as Fmdisc that I showed you, but this example that I just showed on the screen, those are 2 XML copies. Both are 1 GB in the size, and it took about 8 minutes, I think, to process everything. Now the cons are it works with an XML copy, which is a downside in my book because an XML copy takes a while to create. It takes much longer to create than a DDR, although it is possible to automate it. This is the tool that we are using the most. And we have a schedule running on our server at night that creates an XML. I see some messages in the chat. Yes, exactly. You can save copy as XML in the script. Yes, that is. I'm not sure how can I do the dark mode because my slides are in white and I'm not very handy with that, to be honest. But okay, let's continue. It does imagine things sometimes. And what am I talking about? If we go and take a look at custom menus, for example, there are some things that are not clear. Like, what am I looking at? I'm not sure. Here, what is happening here? I'm also not sure. And some things, they are not very cross-platform. As an example, these two XML copies, one was created on my MacBook, and the second one was created on the server, on the Windows server. And that led to things, where can we see that best? I think probably here. So some regional differences, local settings, or whatever you would want to call that, they are registered as changes. That's not the best, but okay, it is not that hard to work around. If you do your XML copies on the same device every night, that's not that big of a drawback. It's just something to be aware of. Here you can see this uses a comma and the other one uses a semicolon for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, that is just a minor thing. Yes, that's I already mentioned, and it does a per file analysis. So if you use a data separation model, you have several different files. Like our biggest client, for example, we have 5 different files. We have to make an XML copy for each file every night. That is a disadvantage of an XML copy, because in DDR you just select all the files, everything is done. And the next thing is Inspector Pro 8. I have a cool thing that I use in combination with my Belgian residence permit here. This is a recently released solution from Beeswax. Mr. Vincenzo Menano has been presenting it a lot to all the Claris partners over the last year. I've personally seen the demo twice for ClickWorks and at .fmp. Was pretty impressed both times. I think a lot of you already seen that. It was released around 2 months ago, finally. We at ClickWorks haven't yet decided if we're going to switch to it, and I will let you know why when it got to cons. The pros is it has many features. If you've seen the demo, you know what I'm talking about. It does not just the schema tracking, it does a lot more. If you're interested, you can check it out on Inspector Pro's website. They are very proud of their software and they explain in details what it does. Same as FM version, it can be installed in a form of an add-on and you can automate it. It will do the changes tracking automatically. You don't really need to do much. I think that's a really great thing. It has a fast and smooth and good UI and UX. From what we could see in the demo, it looks much better than other alternatives. This is my personal favorite, and it is from a well-known and trusted developer. And as far as I know, they work together closely with Claris because I think it is also working with XML copies, and Claris are also working on something with XML copies, so they are cooperating, and I hope that will result in a good product. So the con is, some people might say it is too many features, and I can completely agree with that. If you're interested in tracking schema changes, just some more basic, let's say, approach, this might be way too much. You know, it's like buying a Ferrari to go to work 10 minutes every day. It's not for everyone. It is really a good tool for really big projects and bigger companies because it does a lot. But at the same time, it is quite expensive for businesses. After I finish, we will take a look at the pricing, but it is more pricier than other options. It is justified, I can say, because it's a great tool. But if you're not using it to the whole extent, I don't think that's something for you. You would just spend your money on something you don't use. So the version 8 of Inspector Pro is fairly new. People are still reluctant to try it. As I mentioned, it came out 2 months ago. Some people are already stuck to their current software, like we are as well. We're still on the fence. Do we need that? Will we use that to the whole extent? We don't know. And lastly, it is, well, at least from their website information, it is only for Mac. They are working on the Linux, yeah, I think Linux as well, Linux and Windows version, and it is for FM24 only. And not everyone is using FM24. I don't, for example. I'm still waiting for a green light from someone to tell me, okay, that's really stable, you can use that in production, that's fine. But yeah, if you're not using FM20, as far as I remember, the previous demos were done on a previous version of FileMaker, so I'm not sure why it states that is FileMaker 24 only, but I'm not gonna complain about that because they know better probably. And that about concludes the overview section of my presentation. These are the links to things that I mentioned that you would want to see maybe. And in the end, the pricing that I promised to show to you. Why is my browser not opening? Yeah, so FM version, we already looked at it. FM perception, the pricing is better. It is more users compared to FM version, which is just 10 users. And for Inspector Pro, for a single user, it is much cheaper. This one for one user is twice as much. This one don't even offer an option for one user. But as I mentioned, for big businesses, this is quite a lot. And I'm not sure, like up to 8 users, as I was saying at ClickWorks, we have around 15 people. We're not sure that we want to pay that price for something that we are not sure we are going to use. And yeah, as I said, the FM comparison tool comes free. Well, not free. you still pay for FM perception, but it comes as a package. And yeah, this is the end of my presentation. If you're tired of me bubbling all the time, you're in luck, because we can now discuss something. If you would like to present me with some solutions that you are using, or give me a feedback on some solutions that I was not that in favor of, please proceed. Thank you.
I think Vince said that he was waiting for the recent version of FileMaker due to the AI capabilities which are used in Inspector Pro.
Yes, I think that is the main case, because in the first demo that we had from Wins at ClickWorks at the beginning of the year, I think, there were still no AI features, but at .fmp he showed some new interesting features, like semantic search in the whole file Inspector Pro, and there are even a feature where you can ask an AI to describe you briefly what this script does, which is something pretty nice if you have a project that you just got from another developer who left or something, and you need to quickly know, okay, what the hell is going on here? So yeah, that is the main thing, I guess.
Tony has his hand up.
Thank you. Thanks. So, hey, I thought that was a very excellent overview. I posted, as always, something into the chat. I lost the bullets along the way. So use cases, you laid them out at the top, which is great. You know, why do I care? You made some good cases, some bad things that could happen. I would riff off that to say that first off, don't worry about us. Nothing bad happening over here, but it might happen if you got a new developer in the mix. And I would say that a solution using the design functions that sends a help ticket says, hey, something changed that's potentially destructive. I'm just riffing off your presentation here, which was good. Another use case, I don't do it, but you know, track the changes to get some automatic billing backup. It's like, hey, this was what I did, might be helpful. I was paying attention. It seems there's 3 types of tools: FileMaker based, things that are built with Swift, like I believe FM perception, and web based. I would throw out the web based because I'm not giving my DDR to anybody, that's for sure. Sorry, whoever built that. The FileMaker based has a nice feature because you can extend. Like if I do something with a FileMaker tool, I can use FileMaker code, and I can send a help request and, you know, pipe it through the pipeline and send a Slack alert, say, hey, this thing changed, you know, something's going to break. And then final point here, just reading my notes. Changes can be tracked. The design functions, we're doing that. We have something system structure, very useful. We add FMP URLs to click, you know, to go to the layout, for instance, if we see something amiss. The data design report or save as XML. And yeah, someone made a really good point. The save as XML is scriptable, even if you have multiple files. Anyway, that's my, I guess, comments. I don't know if there's a question in there, but I did enjoy the presentation very much. Thank you.
Yeah, that is a big plus for the XML, even though it is much longer to create. But yes, it is scriptable. That is exactly what we are doing, at least for our biggest client that has oh, I don't even want to start on the size of that thing. But yeah, we are doing the nightly thing that does the XML for all the files. And then one of our most experienced developers just loads up the FM comparison, takes a quick look, okay, what changed? If there are any things that need an attention of a team, maybe a quick code review with whoever did the change. And it's been pretty useful, I would say. We started implementing this kind of checks since beginning of summer, I think, and we already avoided a few things that would cause pretty nasty problems. And to add to the web-based thing, why am I not in favor of that? In your XML thing, you can just see the hashed password of users. Of course, it is a hashed password, but still, I don't think I would want to share that with anyone outside of the company.
All right. Hey, let me just give you one. When I was thinking about this a while ago, I'll give you two use cases that are like dangerous things that could happen. We use a tiny bit of indirection, not a lot, but there's some particular use cases. So we have fields with a particular name that are hit by indirection. If someone were to change any of those fields name, that would break code. So a DDR on startup could give me an alert, perhaps before it gets broken. Same thing with script names, because those are all available through the design functions. And anyway, that's all I got. Thanks again.
Yeah, just to comment to what Tom says, maybe you got me wrong. I'm not opposed to base elements. We're just not very experienced with it. We did not really use it in our projects, so it would be an opportunity cost to learn about it. And yeah.
I have a couple questions. You say you have a team of 15. How many people actually work on any particular project? I mean, how many people are you juggling?
On the biggest project that we have, I think we have about 10 people working on it. And other projects, smaller ones, it's normally 2 to 4, 5 people. Some projects, very small projects, we have just one developer working on it, but we still have someone who oversees it, because if a developer leaves, we still need to know what's going on there. But yeah, in general, the biggest concern for us is our biggest client. So this is where we are using these tools the most, because yeah, 10 people working sometimes at the same time.
You can step on each other.
Yes.
And has you or your clients ever considered using the results of the comparisons to in respect to your billing? Like, look, we did this much work, we actually accomplished this much. Or is a backup justification for your billing when they say, why are you costing so much?
Yeah, for that, we mostly use Asana. In Asana, we have all the tickets. It's mostly all the changes that we do for the client are requested by the client. So they first, well, they are like managers, an owner of this software, and they have clients that work with it. clients complain that something is not working on, or they want something to be added, then the owner of the product is considering, okay, is that a valid request or not? Then they create an Asana ticket for us. Then we estimate how much time that would take us to develop. They decide, okay, we'll go for it, or yeah, just forget about it. And then we mostly do this kind of management in Asana. So our client sees what we are doing, how we are doing, because we usually leave a comment when we are finished. Okay, I changed this amount of scripts, I changed this and this and this, and this is why it took me so long to do that. And yeah, they see pretty much everything what we are doing without the need of, you know, going to technical, seeing, okay, show me the lines of code. Yeah, they don't really need that. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Do we have any other additions?
I think you're good.
I can post all the links that I promised. Yeah, I'm just work. Chat. Yes. Okay, I guess
Great.
that would be it for me. So you can take the mic.
All right, thanks a bunch. Great overview. Anybody else have anything they'd like to mention, or announcements or what have you? And if not, we could just end the meeting. All right, I'm going to stop recording.
I'd say hit the 3 dots if you want all these links.